Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we've got play-up props on Thursday in the NBA playoffs here. 3 games that we get to choose from. Definitely want to make sure to subscribe to that page, as we also have best bets up for tonight, and we will have those each and every day moving forward that we've got postseason, both these videos. So make sure to subscribe and continue to follow along throughout this postseason. Also head to thelines.com and use everything we have up on the site right now, including that prop finder tool under the NBA tab to make sure that you're getting the best odds available to you from all these books that you're making bets with this NBA playoffs. Nate, let's go ahead and get into your first NBA play-up prop for today.
Mr. Philly, the vet, Kyle Lowry, over 10.5 points is even points and assists, excuse me. I mean, 7.5 points is fine. 2.5 assists is juiced up, but I like putting them together and getting even money here because he's playing 36 minutes so far in this series. He's being tasked with either nagging Brunson or camping out in the lane to throw his timing off and draw some charges. And I mean, we saw even last year with Miami in that Knicks series, he averaged 12 and 5.7 assists in 29 minutes. So the minutes have gone up here. He's obviously a playoff veteran. I mean, the last 3 years in the playoffs, averaged 9 points, 4.5 assists. Again, just 27 minutes. We're going up here. He's been maybe there's some shooting regression here, but 50% on catch and shoot threes is probably more the effect of like Joel Embiid just being in there, right? I mean, and you get open looks, and he's willing to cash out. I think he's probably going to shoot better at home. Again, the Philly native, but I mean, just all the role players are probably going to be playing better here in a desperate situation. And after that frustrating end to game 2, he's also made 55 passes per game in these 36 minutes, 7.5 potential assists, and only 2.5 have resulted in assists. So if the other role players, again, are going to hit these shots that he's swinging to them, assists are going up. Again, the home road splits, he averaged 5 assists, 7.5 points, shot 44% from deep. In Philly, after being acquired, was plus 46 at home and minus 57 on the road. And if you want another narrative, you know, he's playing his little Nova bros, Hart, DiVincenzo, Brunson, all like came to that school after him. He did have 11 and 5 in just 25 minutes. His first home game against this squad, and then 2 week games at MSG, with Philly just couldn't score without Embiid. So I just think Embiid being in there allows all these other guys to fill in where they can. Batum, Lowry, I expect them to have a good game shooting the ball and facilitating.
Yeah. And if there was a prop for like charges or some sort of like hustle, annoying play, I'd take the over on that as well. I hate when I'm rooting for the team playing Kyle Lowry in the playoffs. I hate it, whether for money purposes or because I love the Knicks. He's just a gamer, dude. And yeah, I think he's a good go-to. It was very clear, very quick that Nick Nurse was like, yo, I trust this dude on the floor in these key situations. He's in the damn starting lineup now, and he's like 50 years old or whatever. So yeah, this makes complete sense. He's never going to stop as long as Kyle Lowry's in the playoffs. I'm going to take him to outperform his probably like innate abilities, to be honest. So that's my Kyle Lowry take. But let's move on to more Joel Embiid. I'm just going to take him in the first quarter. You can still get an 8.5, dog. Come on. Like this should probably be 10.5. To be honest with you, he's averaging 13.5 in the first quarter against this game in this series so far, taking 10 and 9 field goal attempts respectively. Also getting 4 free throw attempts. Also shooting 3 threes a first quarter so far. Also taking 9 threes per game so far in this series, and it's very clear that might be a good bet as well. By the way, the juice is gone for you to take an over on his threes in general. But if you take a half a 3 in the first, you're getting really good plus money. If you take over 1.5 threes made in this, or if you take over 2.5 threes made, now you're talking about some pretty cool ladder stuff. But 9 3-point attempts from a dude who clearly keeps landing on his knee wrong and wants it. Like I think the shots are going to be going up for him from a little bit further away, but he's been wet, and being super wet from everything 15 feet and in as well, with a 70% field goal percentage, 78% in the first quarter, by the way. This is something he does all season too. Like this is a low number on the season. He's averaging 11.4 points per game in the first quarter. That's when he gets at least 8 minutes in the first quarter. I could have gone higher than that, right? In the 8 minutes, though, that he's in the first quarter, we're talking about going over in 15 of 16 games, averaging 11.5 points per game with just 8 minutes. Like, and in the games where on the regular season where he averages, or where you filter it to go, okay, he played at least 8 minutes. He's averaging 9.7 minutes still, taking basically the same amount of shots and scoring the same amount, getting to the free throw line the same amount. Like, dude's a beast in the first quarter. He comes out and just owns you and does everything that maybe his body can't effectively do for 42 straight minutes, but it can certainly do it for 12 straight with a couple breaks in there as well, obviously. So I'm going to just keep going back to that. Like I said, he's averaging 10 field goal attempts when he plays at least 8, which is basically on par for this series so far as well. 14.6 points per game in those 16 games in the first quarter, in those 16 games where he played at least 8 minutes. And now he's played 12 in the first 2. I expect that to happen again. I'm fine with a ladder up to 10 plus. You can get 12 plus on DraftKings as well. It's just what he keeps doing. And I don't see any reason that this would dwindle. I said this in the other bet too, like Tyrese Maxey's a great bet at 5.5 points, but he is coming out at the 9-minute mark in the first quarter. That's the rotations at this point. And in part because Mr. Big Booty Kyle Lowry is in there for the first quarter to keep that thing going with Joel, right? And I don't think DeAnthony Melton's coming back. And in fact, it's one of those things where like I would leave DeAnthony Melton off of too much playing time and maybe try to ease him back in, but be totally fine with Lowry and Joel. And at that point, Lowry probably a little bit more likely to assist when he's playing with JoJo, as he's always looking for him, and they run that 2-man game, pick the post, and then back out to Lowry if he needs an outlet, et cetera, et cetera. So Joel's probably going to have at least 12 points in this first quarter is my guess, and I'm very, very happy and confident in over 8.5 points.
Yeah, well, it is up to 9.5 at least on FanDuel. Because somebody set an incorrect line when this has just been a cash cow, as we did hit it in game 2. This is just when Embiid comes out, when he's warm, when he can play without having all the complications that come with his body later in the game. He's also only minus 115 to lead the game in scoring, and I don't think Maxey's going to outscore him in this spot. And Brunson, while we think like can bounce back, like, is he really going to score 31 plus where Embiid is projected to go? So I think, backing him to just get buckets here from the jump is a good call. Yeah. I got one more here. I got Paolo under 4.5 turnovers. Okay. Let's figure it out, young man. I mean, the juice has swung where here it's now like minus 150 for him to have 5 turnovers. And I know he's had 15 in Cleveland as he got used to the playoffs, and not just being the man in the regular season, but being the man in the playoffs is a whole different animal. And I think there's going to be some film study here with the 2 days off, and adjusting to the fact that Cleveland's just kind of building a wall against him. And like, look, you can't go into this and then make a bad decision. Like, you have to be prepared and maybe like use some different speeds, etc. He did figure it out against a lot of packet-in defenses in the regular season, like down the stretch against Milwaukee, Chicago, Minnesota. He didn't have 5 turnovers. The only ones I could find really is the Clippers forced him into 7, and like, just hats off to Ty Lue. He probably did a lot of tricky stuff there. And like Utah and Toronto, he had like a ton of turnovers, probably because he's like, I can do whatever I want. And then he wound up, making a few mistakes. But I mean, his last 2 in the regular season against Cleveland, 3 turnovers per game. There's some regression here. Like, when he drives, he's only having a 27% pass rate in this series, 13% turnover rate. At home on the season, 35% pass rate, 7% turnover rate. So he is making better decisions in the regular season. Maybe he was pressing a little bit because nobody else could hit a shot. And he's like, I can't trust it to kick it out to, whoever is over right now. But yeah, I mean, those guys, again, role players will be better at home, desperate team. And there's some regression here in terms of like these loose balls actually being turnovers. The Cavs have recovered a league high 10.5 loose balls per game in these first 2. The 62% of the loose balls versus Orlando getting 36%. Like, more desperate team, younger, scrappier team at home. They're going to grab some of those. Cavs actually have the 4th fewest deflections, though, in the playoffs, and they've only drawn two charges. So it's not like they're just baiting Paolo into a ton of charges or deflecting all of his passes. Like, there's just some positive regression in terms of not turning the ball over, on top of the fact that I think he'll make some adjustments as he gets used to this playoff stuff.
Yep. I dig it. I mean, figured out, young man, for sure. I dig everything you're saying, though. Like, once he comes back home, I think this is a really smart way to back Paolo. Like, I just think this is the one game where you'll notice if you see best bets. I like a couple, like first half or the team down 2-0 or some early stuff or the team's down 2-0. this ain't one of them, as you'll notice. Like, I think the Magic have a decent shot at staying in this game and doing all that stuff, but like, this is the one that scares me the most. But so it's my main point saying that is like, I don't think that like Paolo's counting stats are necessarily just going to start going straight up just because they're back at home right now. I think there's too much matchup between these two teams and the way that Cleveland can defend. Paolo is better at scoring against this Cleveland team maybe than like a Franz. But my main point is this is a sharp play to back Paolo without having to rely on him to like go over some decently high props at this point against a really good Cavs defense for what he wants to do. So let me close it out here with a Cav and talk about DG the PG. Big fan of that guy on this show, but he has been taking sort of a secondary role to Donnie Mitchell. And as a result, we've gotten his points prop down to 15.5. This thing opened in the series at 17.5. It was still 16.5 very consistently once Donnie Mitchell came back from injury, and now we get a little point premium that we get to use to our advantage. And I'm going to take that at 15.5 because he's been so efficient on the shots he has been taking. Just add a little bit of volume here, dude, and we go over. He's bumped up against this number twice now, 15 and 14 points in the first two games. If you think this is going to be a little bit closer, because the first game was over in the third quarter, it was really over at half. The Magic made a little comeback in the second quarter, and then it was just dunzo in the third. And then you've also got if you think this is going to be closer, the second game was fine. I mean, they made a comeback, but it was still, they were never really in that game, if we're being honest. It was always 12 to 16 points that their deficit was at. And I think there's a lot more likelihood that they're a little bit, closer in this game. So DG's minutes have been, about like 31, 34. It hasn't been like huge, crazy, playoff starter minutes. But I think that if they're down a bit more, they're going to need him. Karis LeVert hasn't been quite as good this series yet either. Not saying it's just a 2-game sample size, but I do think they want Darius in there when they need the point guard in there a bit more. But the shots should also be there a bit more for him. He only took 11 field goals in the first two, but if you look at the two previous this year with Donnie Mitchell against the Magic, he took 24 and 19 shots in those games. So I would imagine that at least, with first of all, Jalen Suggs being a little bit hobbled, he's still going to be on Donnie Mitchell. You'll get some Gary Harris on Darius Garland, but then you also get those Darius Garland backup minutes against Cole Anthony and some Markelle Fultz, to be honest, to be fair. Like Markelle Fultz is also the one on him a little bit more, but that hasn't mattered. Like I said, in this series where he's averaging 20 points per game against this team earlier in the year. And that's with 1 for 18, then 1 with 22 and 1 around 20 as well. So he's consistently going over this. And when you give him the 31 minutes plus that he's averaged or that he got so far in this series, at least now you're talking about 19 points a game on the season. You're talking about 16 field goal attempts. So it's really where I'm starting and ending this whole dispute with him is just like the field goal attempts, 11 in the first two, but I expect that to be closer between 13 to 16. And I expect 15 field goals is really what I'm saying, field goal attempts from him. So for him to get 16 points on 15 field goal attempts, you throw in that he's taking about 5 threes as well, and getting like three free throws, not much there, but like at the very least the threes and the volume of shots, then yeah, I'm going to take Darius Garland to get 16 points in those situations consistently and hit that what I would expect to be at least 2/3 of the time. So that's why I think this is a good bet here for him to get 16 points.
Yeah, I mean, this is my concern with the Donnie Mitchell stat leader props that I brought up in best bets is that Garland's just being left open much more by this Orlando team. Like they're going to dare him to be the guy to beat them. He goes 4 for 7 in game 2, very clutch from deep. And there's he kind of was slumping on catch and shoots all year, but maybe he's starting to find it now. So, I think he has a chance to step up as they pay more and more attention to Donnie. So 16 points is not a huge number here for a Cavs team that I don't expect Evan Mobley and Jared Allen to bully as much on the road, right, and for the Magic to give it up in the paint. So, yeah, I think these two guards are going to have to be big here if they want to win game 3 on road.
Yeah, that was another part of all this is like there's been so many shots funneled to the bigs for this team, and in part because they're getting a lot of offensive rebounds and Donnie's missing. But you already saw that dwindle down a bit in game 2, mostly Jared Allen at this point instead of like Allen and Mobley getting the field goal attempts, I think is a big part of it. Strus has been cold, and honestly, I still don't like his points. I do like his rebounds, even though they've gone up more. But yeah, I think Darius is going to be called upon a bit more in this one. You can't possibly call on Donnie anymore than he's already been called upon. So yeah, I think Darius steps it up a bit more. And to your point, like, yeah, the open shots and the catch and shoot and all that kind of stuff. So that is all the time, though, that we have for you in Playa Props. Continue to follow along. Check out Best Bets as we've got those up alongside these player props each and every day moving forward with these playoff games. Until we see you next, happy betting.